warmest hug tonight concealed the most painful lie. What has James done? He was just deceived by his own father, stripped of his right to love. He just witnessed Diep's family treat her with cold indifference like a total stranger. Yet standing before Diep, he chose to lie. Dad and the family still care about you deeply. Is that lie a healing balm or a fatal dagger that will destroy Diep when the truth finally comes to light? A man shouldering the weight of the world to protect the smile of the woman he loves. Do you have the courage to watch this until the end? Hit like to support James and subscribe right now so you don't miss the breathtaking twists ahead. The heavy oak door of the study slammed shut, creating a soul-shaking thud, locking the two most powerful men of the Vu family in a space reeking of premium cigars and cold calculation. Outside, a sudden downpour began. The rain hammered against the glass like thousands of needles piercing the tense silence inside. James stood there, in the room he once considered the most sacred place on earth, a place he longed to enter as a child. But now it was nothing more than a gilded cage. He slammed his leather briefcase onto Mr. Sun's desk. The sharp thud made Mr. Sun, who was calmly clipping the end of a cigar, slightly furrow his brow. Why? A short question. Just one word, but it held the repressed fury of 3 agonizing months. Mr. Sun didn't look up. He slowly lit his cigar, the blue flame licking the tip. The pungent aroma of smoke filled the space between father and son. "What is this attitude?" Mr. Sun asked, his voice terrifyingly calm. "Is this how you greet your father after signing a $1 trillion merger contract?" James let out a scoff, a twisted, bitter smile. He leaned both hands on the desk, bringing his face close to his father's. His eyes veined with red. "Stop beating around the bush. You know exactly what I'm talking about. 3 months ago, right in this room, what did you tell me? Do you remember?" Mr. Sun took a drag, exhaling the smoke slowly. "I said many things. You said..." James's voice trembled, every word hissing through his teeth. "You said, come back, revive the corporation, prove your worth. Just come back, and I will agree to anything. You swore on your honor as the head of this family." James slammed his hand on the table again, harder this time. "I did it. I came back. I threw away my freedom. I worked 20 hours a day to clean up the mess the shareholders left behind. I saved your chairman seat. And this morning, when I gave you the wedding invitation, what did you do? You tore it to shreds, right in front of Diep. Only then did Mr. Sun place the cigar in the crystal ashtray. He stood up, walked around the desk to the window, looking out at the sheet of white rain. His silhouette was large, steady, but imposing. "I didn't go back on my word," Mr. Sun said in a deep voice, not turning around. "I agreed to give you everything. You wanted supercars, I signed the papers. You wanted 10% of the subsidiary transferred. You wanted control of the Southern project handed over. I agreed to everything, except marrying that girl. That is fraud." James screamed, his voice echoing through the vast room. "It was a trap. You knew damn well I didn't need cars, shares, or power. I came back here, worked myself to the bone for you, for one single purpose, to get your approval for Diep and little Nye." Mr. Sun spun around, his eyes sharp as knives. "And that is exactly why I had to deceive you." That blunt admission left James stunned. He took a step back, as if he'd just been slapped. "Dad, you admit you tricked me. Yes. Mr. Sun stepped forward, his presence overwhelming. Because I could not stand to watch my only son live in that squalid rental for one more day, I had people watching you. I saw you eating instant noodles instead of rice. I saw you riding that beat-up motorbike under the scorching sun to deliver goods. I saw you a business genius, humbling yourself to apologize to lowlifes for a few pennies. Mr. Sun paused to catch his breath, his chest heaving with emotion. Do you think I could bear that I'm your father? I would rather be known as a liar and a cheat than let you suffer out there. I used that promise like a rope to tie around your neck and drag you back to this throne where you belong. The room fell into silence. The only sounds were the rain and the heavy breathing of the two men. James looked at his father, his gaze shifting from shock to utter disappointment. He shook his head slightly, his voice suddenly becoming quiet, yet more painful than his earlier scream. You call that suffering? James gave a faint, bitter laugh. You saw me eating instant noodles, but you didn't see who cooked those noodles for me. You saw me riding a beat-up motorbike, but you didn't see how tight Diep held me from behind rain or shine. You saw me bowing to others, but you didn't see how Diep and little Ly wiped my sweat, telling me how proud they were of me when I came home. He stepped closer to Mr. Sun, looking him straight in the eye. In those days, I lacked material things, but for the first time in my life, I felt like I was living, not just existing like a money-making machine in this house. Love doesn't put food on the table. Mr. Sun dismissed it sharply, cutting his hand through the air. Then when sickness or trouble hits, what does she have to support you? She is a single mother, James. She has another man's child. Do you plan to turn this family into a laughingstock? Do you plan to raise a stranger's child with this family's money? I don't need this family's money to raise them. James grit his teeth. I have hands, I have legs, I have a brain. I can raise them with my own strength. You taught me independence, didn't you? Why are you afraid of me being independent now? Because you are James Vu, Mr. Sun roared. You are not allowed to be mediocre. Your wife must be someone who elevates your status, not a burden dragging you down into the mud. James closed his eyes, taking a deep breath to suppress the rage threatening to explode. He realized that arguing with logic against his father was useless. Mr. Sun didn't view life through his heart. He viewed it through the lens of profit and face. He opened his eyes, his gaze steady and colder than ever. Then I apologize, Mr. Chairman. James switched to a formal address, cold and distant. If the price of being the heir is selling my heart cheap, then I can't afford it. I'm returning it. James reached into his suit pocket, pulling out the car keys, the corporate access card, and the Patek Philippe watch, worth a fortune that Mr. Sun had given him the day he returned. He placed them all gently on the wooden desk. You said I could do anything except marry Diep, so I choose to do nothing at all. Mr. Sun froze, staring at the pile of items on the desk. What are you doing? Are you leaving again? Not leaving, Dad. I'm being fired. James straightened his collar, his voice steely. You said you didn't want me to suffer. But you don't understand. The greatest suffering for a man isn't having empty pockets. It's helplessly watching the woman he loves be humiliated by his own family. You tricked me into coming back. I fulfilled my duty to save the company. We are even. James turned his back and walked toward the door. Stop right there, Mr. Sun bellowed. If you walk out that door, you lose everything. This time, I will block all connections. No one will dare hire you. No one will dare work with you. I will make sure you and that Diep girl have nowhere left to stand in this city. Do you believe me?" James's steps halted. He stood still for a few seconds, his silhouette lonely, but ramrod straight. Mr. Sun's threat wasn't empty words. He had enough power to crush a small business, let alone an individual. He was backing his son into a corner using fear to rule just as he did with his employees. James slowly turned back. There was no fear on his face, only a deep sadness mixed with a terrifying resolve. "Dad." James said, his voice light as a breeze but heavy as a mountain. "You can block every path. You can make sure I can't get a job. You can use money to drown me." He took one last step forward, facing the old father who was trembling with rage. "But there is one thing you will never understand. That is Diep." James smiled, the smile of a man who had seen through the gamble of life. "She loved me when I was a nobody with empty hands. If tomorrow I'm begging on the street, she will be the one holding the tattered hat, walking beside me, not the one running away. You threatened me with poverty. You chose the wrong weapon, because to deep poverty isn't as scary as deceit." Then James held up a finger, his eyes burning with fire. "I ask you for just one thing. Let me marry her. The rest assets, reputation, you keep them. But if you dare touch a single hair on Diep or little Nye's head..." James lowered his voice, a deep, raspy tone full of danger. "Then the person standing before you will no longer be your son, but the greatest rival you have ever met in the business world. You know my capabilities, don't you?" That was a declaration of war. Not from a rebellious child, but from a tiger cub that had fully matured, ready to bare its fangs to protect its territory. The whole room froze. Mr. Sun stared at James. For the first time in his life, he feared his own son's gaze. It no longer held awe or fear. It held a determination for mutual destruction if pushed to the brink. Mr. Sun looked down at his trembling hand, then at the family photo from 20 years ago hanging on the wall, back when his wife was alive, when James was small. Marriage is a responsibility. He had lived his whole life by that motto, and he was utterly lonely. Now his son was choosing. Marriage is happiness. And he was ready to throw away this entire empire for it. James turned and grabbed the door handle. "I'm going home to Diep. I'll wait for your answer tonight. 1. You gain a daughter-in-law and a grandchild. 2. You lose your only son forever." "Wait." Mr. Sun's voice rang out hoarser and weaker than ever before. James stopped, his hand still on the latch, his heart pounding. Was Mr. Sun's fortress finally crumbling? Or was this the end of their father-son relationship? Mr. Sun slumped into his chair, his strength seemingly drained. He stared into the void, the image of the young boy, James, and the resilient man before him overlapping. James's resolve, Diep's sacrifice, and his own cruelty. Slowly, Mr. Sun opened his desk drawer. He took out a thick envelope and placed it on the desk. The air became thick with tension. Even now, one might wonder what was inside. A plane ticket to exile James' disownment, papers, or approval. Mr. Sun slid the envelope toward the edge of the desk toward James, but he said nothing. He spun his chair around, turning his back to his son, looking out at the pouring rain. "Go!" he said, his voice blending with the sound of the rain. "Go ask that girl if she accepts a difficult patriarchal father-in-law who once looked down on her." James stood frozen. He turned his head sharply, looking at his father's lonely silhouette. "And tell her Mr. Sun added, hesitating, "Tell her to bring the little girl too. I hate eating alone." A single tear rolled down James's cheek. He didn't offer a hollow "thank you." He understood this was the greatest concession and the clumsiest apology from a father who had spent his life only knowing how to give orders. He took the envelope. Inside wasn't money, but the family heirloom jade bracelet left by his mother, an item reserved solely for the eldest daughter-in-law. "Thank you, Dad. Tonight, we'll come home." The door closed. James rushed out into the rain, but this time the rain didn't feel cold. It was a rain washing away resentment, leaving behind a green sprout of hope growing from the cracks of prejudice. But will happiness truly smile on them forever? Or will the trials of the upper class once again suffocate Diep? While the battle between James and Mr. Sun in the study left heavy aftershocks, a completely different atmosphere was unfolding in a room in the annex villa. James's mother, Mrs. Lane, the powerful woman who had retreated behind the scenes, the keeper of the family's internal affairs, was sitting opposite Diep. On the table lay a stack of thick ledgers, commercial contracts riddled with legal terms, and quarterly financial reports. "Look at this number." Mrs. Lane pointed to a line on the balance sheet, her voice stern but not harsh. "Gross profit doesn't tell the whole story. What you need to care about is the actual cash flow. If you are to be a daughter-in-law of this house, you can't just know how to cook or arrange flowers. You must know how to keep money and see through people via these numbers." Diep nodded her pen, scribbling furiously. Sweat beaded on her forehead. She was used to calculating daily grocery expenses. Now facing numbers in the billions, the pressure weighed heavily on her small shoulders. But she didn't dare complain. Mrs. Lane looked at Diep, her eyes showing a rare hint of satisfaction. She had no idea about the fiery argument that had just exploded between her husband and son. She still thought everything was going according to plan. James had returned, and Diep was being trained to be worthy. She didn't know that outside that door, a storm was waiting to sweep all this effort away. That's enough for today. Mrs. Lane closed the ledger. "You have potential. Work hard and don't hide your ignorance. But remember my words. In this house, there is no place for weakness." Diep bowed in thanks, but her stomach churned with unease. Where had James gone so early in the morning? Why did he tell her to come study with his mother instead of going with her? Meanwhile, James's car sped along the bumpy red dirt road, kicking up a cloud of dust in its wake. He wasn't going to the company. He was on a mission to find the missing piece in the life of the woman he loved. Diep's broken confession from the night before when she woke up startled from a nightmare echoed in his mind. "James, I don't remember my father's face clearly. I just remember when I was 14, we were dirt poor, drowning in debt. Dad took me to the neighboring village and married me off as a concubine to a timber trading family to settle a debt. My husband, he was very old and he died not long after. I was kicked out, drifting on my own until now. I'm scared that Dad has already forgotten me." James gripped the steering wheel tight. He couldn't let Diep walk down the aisle carrying the insecurity of having no background. He wanted to find her family, wanted to show Mr. Sun that Diep had roots, had parents too. The car pulled up in front of a crooked wooden house nestled deep at the foot of the hill. The scene was even more desolate than James had imagined. Shattered roof tiles covered in moss and a bamboo gate that looked ready to collapse at any moment. "Is anyone home?" James called out his voice, ringing through the silence of the mountains. After a long while, a skinny young man with sun-darkened skin and a faded t-shirt stepped out. He looked at James and the luxury car with a gaze that was a mix of wariness and curiosity. "Who are you looking for? Is this Mr. Hung's house?" James asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "He's my dad, but he's not home," the young man replied, curtly, still clutching a machete. "He went to gather firewood at the crack of dawn." "What's this about?" James let out a small sigh of relief. "Right address. I'm James. I came to ask about your older sister, Diep." The name Diep seemed to make the young man pause. He squinted, rummaging through his barren memory. "Diep," he repeated, his voice painfully indifferent. "Ah, I think I have a sister by that name, but it's been ages. I was tiny when she got married off. Haven't heard a peep in years. Thought she was dead or ran off to some foreign land." James's heart clenched. "Thought she was dead. Is that how this family remembers her? She is alive and living very well." James said, his voice hardening. "Your father, does he mention her often?" The young man shrugged. "Dad. He can barely scrape together a meal for the day. He doesn't have the energy to bring up the past. Anyway, who are you, a debt collector? Or did she cause some trouble you want payment for?" The naked pragmatism in the question made James feel bitter. He realized that poverty here had eroded family bonds down to the bare bone. "I am her fiancé," James replied. "I want to meet your father, to ask for his blessing." The younger brother looked James up and down his eyes, flashing with a hint of calculation before flickering out. "Then you'll have to sit and wait. Dad goes deep into the forest. Who knows if he'll make it back by dark? I have to go load cargo at the lumber yard. If I don't work, the whole family starves tonight." With that, he cast a careless glance back, grabbed his machete, and walked off, leaving James stranded in the blazing sun. James waited. He sat on the dusty steps, watching the sun drift from high noon down toward the west. 1 hour, 2 hours, then 3 passed. The house was hollow, exuding a chill despite the bright sunlight. There wasn't a single family photo, not one memento to prove Diep had ever existed here. By the time the crimson sunset draped over the forest, Mr. Hung still hadn't returned. James checked his watch. He couldn't wait any longer. He had promised to pick Diep up tonight. He couldn't let her worry. James stood up, pulled a wad of cash from his wallet, and tucked it under an upturned bowl on the rotting wooden table in the center of the room. He grabbed a piece of paper and scribbled a quick note. "I am James Diep's husband. I will bring her back to visit you very soon." He turned and walked away, his heart heavy. He had hoped to bring back good news, a touching reunion. But the reality was far crueler. A family that had forgotten their own daughter under the crushing weight of survival. That evening, at Diep's small rental house, Diep sat, curled up on the sofa, her eyes glued to the door. When the familiar sound of the engine roared, she sprang up, rushing out like a child. "James!" She threw her arms around him the moment he stepped out of the car. James wrapped his arms around her, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair, to chase away the musty, cold smell of that wooden shack from the afternoon. She looked up, her eyes glistening with hope, and asked the question he feared most. Did you meet my dad? Is he okay? Does he remember me?" James looked deep into her eyes. He saw the fragility there. If he told the truth now, that her brother only saw her as a debt causer, that her father was gone all day, with no sign of life, that the house held no warmth for her, Diep would collapse. She had suffered too much already. James swallowed hard. He gently stroked her cheek and smiled a sad but reassuring smile. I went there. But unfortunately, your dad was out working. Diep looked slightly disappointed. Dad was out. Facciami sase sakin. Yeah. James lied, his voice gentle. He went to the forest early. Your brother said he's doing well. It's just that work is busy, so he comes home late. I waited and waited, but I was afraid you'd be worried at home, so I had to leave. So, not my little brother. Did he mention me? Diep pressed. James froze for a second. The image of the young man's emotionless eyes flashed in his mind. Of course. He said, his voice firm. He said he misses his big sister a lot. Said you should come visit when you have time. Diep burst into tears, burying her face in his chest. Tears of happiness. Thank you. I was so afraid. Afraid everyone had forgotten me. James held her tight, staring into the void. He knew he had just planted a sweet lie. But he would rather bear this sin than let her heart break one more time. I promise. James whispered into her hair like a vow to himself. I will do everything to give you a complete family. Whether it's the old family or the new one we are about to create. But James knew the real challenge still lay ahead. His father, Mr. Sun, still hadn't made his final decision. His mother still didn't know. And Diep's father, the mysterious man deep in the forest, will he accept the daughter he sold to pay debts, returning as a noble lady, or will he be another variable that destroys this fragile happiness? That night, the whole city slept, but James stayed wide awake. He knew that tomorrow, when the sun rose, the real war would begin. Will his lie be exposed? And will Mr. Sun bow before his son's love?